I've been prompted by a number of questions I've been asked to record these thoughts on how family practitioners might want to think about dealing with the valuation of family businesses during the COVID pandemic. It seems to me that the most common question that they're being asked is whether they should be proceeding with all due haste or dragging their heels. For some clients, they're very keen to use the opportunity of the coronavirus pandemic to get what they think is a terrific result in a window of opportunity where they can demonstrate that their businesses are temporarily worth very little. In other cases, you've got people who want to try and delay, and possibly the best outcome in terms of certainty would be to tell your clients to go away and come back in a couple of years when we've got a bit more certainty in life. But of course, that's not the right result for practitioners, and it's certainly not the right result for clients who need to get on with their lives and get their divorces and financial proceedings sorted. So what can you do if you've got to try and sort out a divorce with a family business? The first thing is, I don't think you should leave the risk all on your own shoulders, but because a burden shared is a burden halved, you're much better off instructing a forensic accountant, somebody like me, with whom you can work and assess whether you think any sort of meaningful valuation or expert report can be commissioned in the current climate, or whether actually you've got no alternative but to wait until things improved. At least you're not making that decision on your own. For many, many businesses, they've entered what is effectively a period of cryogenic hibernation. And it's really that which needs to be analysed in a bit more detail to work out whether or not anything sensible can be said during the pandemic, or whether, in fact, you've got no alternative but wait till the end of the crisis and assess things in a few months' time. This is a list that the Ministry of Justice put out of the priorities to be used in the county courts, from which it's quite clear that it's going to be virtually impossible during the lockdown for anybody to sue to recover an unpaid debt. What that means in practice is that businesses can simply stop paying all payments out of their bank accounts in the knowledge that it's very unlikely that any recovery action will be taken. But the key question for those businesses is whether those debts are going to continue mounting up in the background, or whether, in addition to a payment holiday, they've actually been able to negotiate a waiver of the debt altogether. Many businesses may find that the process of going into hibernation is much easier than the defrosting that follows. In other words, the return to trading conditions once the lockdown eases is going to be the most testing time for many businesses, and it's that area on which, again, expert advice can sensibly be sought to look at the forecasts and the cash flow dynamics to work out how easy it is for any particular business to return to trading as it was before the start of the lockdown. In the meantime, the question has to be asked whether, even if someone was willing to sell their company during the lockdown, whether anybody would be willing to buy it. Apart from a few predatory private equity firms who are out looking for a bargain, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell a business in the current circumstances. And there's certainly an argument to say, if you can't sell a business, how can it have any value at all? That issue of liquidity can't be ignored and is another issue that needs to be considered carefully. So where does all that leave us? Well, it seems to me that this slide sums it up really. You have to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. By that I mean that it ought to be relatively straightforward to value the business as it was at the start of the COVID pandemic. And that is perhaps the only place that you have to start. You can then consider how it's fared during the crisis and what are its prospects for recovery. And using those three metrics, it may be possible to come up with some sort of sensible discount from the value it had to start with to reflect the risk that it now faces as a result of the pandemic. So in conclusion, delay may seem like a good idea, but even delay isn't without risk, and no one will know for certain what the outcome will be in many months or even a year or two's time. So probably doing nothing isn't the answer for most of your clients. Therefore, my advice is share the risk, talk to a forensic accountant, talk to counsel, and work as a team to try and get a shared view as to the pros and cons of undertaking some sort of forensic valuation even during the lockdown. Consider each case on its own facts and recognise that some businesses will fare better than others, and even those that have been mothballed will be likely to find the experience of returning to trade very different from one another. And finally, probably the best place to start is to value the business as it was, ignoring the coronavirus crisis. Use that as a starting point, and then consider the other factors that I've discussed to work out what might be an appropriate discount to apply for the additional risks that have arisen as a result of the crisis. And that level of discount is probably as much a matter for the court as it is for forensic accountants. So I hope these few ideas have been of use, and if you have any queries, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks a lot, stay well and stay safe.